being chased by dogs, being chased by housewives. Just a little
Housewives.
I can't talk about that. Yes, but yes, he told us about that.
What?
Yeah, oh yeah. He said it was actually very, very common. And this guy's no, I mean, he's not. He's a tobacco chewer, beer drinker, wonderful guy. But I mean, he's not a super handsome guy.
But they're after him because what can Brown do for you?
I think maybe, I don't know. He told us a lot of stories.
My stepsister married her UPS guy.
See,
Living the dream.
The guy that delivered to her office.
Mhm.
Living the dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something about that uniform.
Yeah.
I know what I'm going for for Halloween.
Well, you got to rub on a little body odor too. You get
we had
every UPS guy I've ever encountered. You can tell.
Dim's pheromones.
You can tell he's been out sweating all day.
Well, that was nice because we were able to pick the best sellers and things like that. What you found was,
bitch, I can see you falling asleep while I'm telling my
I'm
story.
not falling asleep. Look, just try it. But I do think now is a great time to welcome everybody to the podcast. Thank you for joining us. This is Two Homeboys. I'm your host, Gabriel with Classy Art, my co-host, Joe Walter with Tango Multimedia, and our very special guest, Tom Liddell, industry extraordinaire. He knows more about the industry than anybody I've ever encountered. Tom Liddell with Planned Furniture Promotions. So thank you guys.
That's
for
nice.
joining
Thank
us.
you. Yeah, well, that's very
now
nice.
We can start the show, Tom. So
all right.
anyways.
I'm ready.
But I'm anxious to make a drink. And I can't open mine and make one yet because I don't know. I've never tried this, if it's good or bad, but Knob Creek Single Barrel Reserve. But this one is special because during your bachelor party, that's my thumbprint if anybody wants to steal my identity.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm drinking.
So you're opening that.
I'm opening
That's the
it.
one that you bottled.
Yeah. Well, no, we didn't actually bottle them. Remember, we got the whole machine and it was doing it, and you just got to do the wax part.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, something you just did, Tom, took some of the brightness out.
Are you still messing with it? I'm clicking the mouse, bro. We're finally there.
I don't know. I had a video of the sun playing, I think, and I shut that, so maybe it helped.
So, Tom, why do you have such a massive collection of booze and you don't drink any of it?
For the grandkids?
Well, I decided I converted a basement garage into a man cave. I hate that term, but I changed it into a man cave, and I did all the work myself. And of course, I had to build a bar, so I built a bar out of live edge white maple, and then I had to put something on it. And so, I got intrigued with my decisions about what I was buying, and started to try to learn more and more. I'm not at the level that you two are, for sure, but just got very intrigued with it. And a friend of mine told me that we need to have an intervention now. So
I think you probably know more about bourbon than we do. We just drink more.
Yeah.
We really don't know much.
I don't know about that. You all have been on the whiskey tour, and I've done a few, but I don't think there are as many as you. You've done the Kentucky tour, which is a bucket list item for me now.
Are we going to make that happen? Is that happening? I know we talked about
I don't think so, because Rob is traveling back and forth. Chris and I can go. Ed still says he'll go. We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. And so what becomes of all of that stuff that you buy? It's just for guests when they come over?
Yes. And, we had a retirement party for a guy who had been with UPS for 38 years this weekend. And they, there's, I don't know how many bottles there are, maybe 150 bottles. And they put a pretty good dent in 4 of them. So it definitely will eventually be consumed. So
Yeah. And are you, if I understand that Facebook thing correctly, when it says 100, that means you are paying $100 for the chance to win a bottle that's going to be worth significantly more than $100. Is
well,
that the way that that works?
let's say hypothetically I was doing something like that.
Right.
Then yes, it would work like that. So there are a number of private Facebook pages where people can enter those pages, and you can buy a number. The one that I go usually has 11 numbers, and they publish the price anywhere from the lowest one I've seen is 30, and the most expensive one I've seen is 100. And sometimes if it's a $2,000 bottle, they might have 20 numbers, and they're all $100 a piece. And I guess we just have to assume they're buying it for less. So they're in effect selling their bottle for $2,000. But of course, nobody pays. They're not paying $1,000 for that bottle. So ultimately, they end up making $1,000 less whatever shipping charges they have. So,
Right.
but I've been very lucky. I've gotten some great bottles. A lot of limited edition bottles, and a lot of the Pappy products. Some limited edition Wild Turkey. Some limited edition Buffalo Trace, or not Buffalo Trace, but Eagle Rare bottles. And I've never seen anything but the one Buffalo Trace. I don't think it comes any other way.
I had some kind of special one the other day.
When you have people over, do you try to ration the bottles out by that person's the likelihood of them appreciating what they're about to experience? Or is it just like, hey, look, here's a wall of stuff, pick what you want and we'll crack it open?
Kind of both. If it's somebody that's more sophisticated and knows or understands about, whiskeys and bourbons, then, I'll let them dig through and find something that they want to try that maybe they've never had before. And I thought that's ultimately when I did what I did, I thought people would really be delighted to do that, but they don't. They usually go straight to their brand, and that's what they want. If somebody drinks old mud puddle, that's what they want. And I thought people would be more daring, but some are, but not too many.
And are they aware that they're not drinking your stash? Because I could see myself hesitating to have something really great because I wouldn't want to take away from the owner's stock.
I think maybe normally that would be a concern, but in the case of why it's there for me, I have it there so that they can enjoy it, specifically for that reason.
Yeah. Gabe, do you do any of that? Do you ration? Like if you have something really good, will you ration it based on who's coming? Like if you know somebody doesn't appreciate it, you get out the cheap stuff?
Well, it's all on display. And so, I've got kind of both sides. I've got one friend. So I had a party and I hired a bartender at my house for Jonathan's birthday. And I invited a bunch of old friends, like from way back. And so all my good, I put under the bar, told her this is, off limits. And one of my friends, go back to middle school, we were 11 years old. He's like, dude, come on, man, come on. And remember that time I did this for you? Remember that time and I was like, all right, he can have some. And then come to find out he had everything. Like he was on a mission to clean me out. So yeah, no, I mean, I don't
your top shelf, everything.
It not like actually clean me out, but I mean the dents made in a lot of bottles. It was fine. It was no big deal. I don't have anything that's like really high end. Like I'm not that kind of collector. I have something that might be hard to find, but not high end, something with a story, but also not high end. But also I don't really have a lot of events in my house. If it might have 3 or 4 people over once every couple months, right? And then that's what we're doing is drinking. So maybe one person there's a bourbon drinker. Like had Brian over, and he wanted to hear all about everything we learned on the tour and open some things for him. Then he's also the one that cleaned me out. So if you're watching, Brian, but he always brings a bottle too, so that's really nice.
That's nice. Yeah, I haven't had that happen yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You got too many bottles.
Well, I've had people bring their own, thinking they
Yeah.
weren't going to be served. The party this weekend, probably half a dozen of the people brought their own little coolers and their
Yeah.
own little stash. And so,
Was that a neighborhood party, or was that like
Well,
industry
it was,
friends? Or I know.
yeah, it was a neighborhood party, mostly at a lake where we have a home, and that neighborhood there. And this guy, we call him the mayor. He knows everybody in the neighborhood and goes around. If anybody needs anything, he'll help you. One of those guys. Really a fine guy.
And he retired from UPS.
38 years. 6
Wow.
years. 6 years inside to start, and then a span on the truck, which was whatever this number ends up being, and then 6 years on the inside to finish. So of 38 years, 12 years inside, and the rest on a truck delivering.
Wow.
He shared a lot of stories with us, really funny. A lot of things that happened. Being chased by dogs, being chased by housewives, just a little
Housewives.
I can't talk about that. Yes, but yes, he told us.
What?
Yeah, oh yeah. He said it was actually very, very common, and this guy's he's he's a tobacco chewer, beer drinker, wonderful guy, but he's not a super handsome guy.
But they're after him because he's, what can Brown do for you?
I think maybe, I don't know. He told us a lot of stories. Typically, pretty honest guy. So,
my stepsister married her UPS guy.
See,
living the dream.
The guy that delivered to her office.
Mhm.
Living the dream.
Yeah. There's something about that uniform.
Yeah.
I know what I'm going for for Halloween.
Well, you got to rub on a little body odor too. You get
we had
every UPS guy I've ever encountered. You can tell.
Dim's pheromones.
You can tell he's been out sweating all day.
Dim's
we had
pheromones.
a roast for this guy, and we had people brought some very funny and interesting roast things. The most memorable one was one related to the fact that he's been delivering packages for 38 years, and now he can go home and worry about his own package. Something like that. I don't know what it was. But he got roasted hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to be roasted. Like, it's such a popular thing now. I don't know. I want to sit there and get roasted. Would you get roasted?
He took it pretty well. I don't know if I'd like it. I know a lot of people act like they do when you see these roasts, but that one blonde girl that hosted Grammys recently, when she does those roasts, I can't think of her name.
Nikki Glazer or Glasser?
She's brutal. She's brutal.
She's fire, dude.
Yeah.
She's a good comedian.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. If she was there, I think I'd run out the door if they were roasting me.
Oh, yeah.
It's very.
You like to think that you have thick skin until everybody starts piling on with all of your worst traits.
Yeah, didn't I saw somebody got in a beef with Marlon Wayans. It was like some rapper. Who was it? So Marlon Wayans came out with a country song, just destroying him. Who was it? But you don't get in beefs with comedians because they're gonna fuck you up.
Yeah.
That's like,
and Tom Brady, this guy's the studliest of all the studs. And he appeared to be visibly shaken by some of the things that were said about him.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She tore him up. A lot of different funny things she said. Deflated balls was one of them. So.
Yeah. Jeez.
So Joe, what you drinking?
I made a switcheroo today, and I'm drinking
Is it
Prosecco. Yeah. With the goal of finishing the bottle.
Pinky's out.
Pinky's out.
All right.
You know, I like it.
Love is love, man.
I like it. And so why force it? The brown, it's a school night.
Careful.
So the brown gives me a headache. So we're
hashtag not racist. Two Homeboys is not racist. Y'all can take Joe in his personal social media. Don't come at us.
Yeah. So the brown gives me a headache. And so I said, tonight I'm going to, since we're doing this on a school night, I'm going to do something a little lighter.
When did that happen with the headaches?
Well, I'm just now figuring it out. So it's been happening, and it's like, man, I'm hungover. And I guess the way that it goes is I have just felt like I couldn't drink all night like I used to. And I thought it was kind of an age thing. And then I noticed at the Vegas market that I was drinking a lot of Prosecco.
Hold on. Let me pause you for a second. I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt Tom's Excel spreadsheets he's working on.
Do what?
He's absolutely working right now.
Well, I was trying to get rid of my name so you could fix it later.
I already fixed it. Don't worry about it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see your name.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it won't be on there in the real life version.
All right.
But yeah, so I noticed that market. It's like I could drink Prosecco all day long and feel fine the next day. So it's not necessarily the age. It's when I incorporate the brown, and if I do a bunch of glasses. So now what I'm doing is I'll have a bourbon or a whiskey. Well, I'll have one. If we go out to dinner, I'll have one of those, and then I'll switch. If I'm going to keep drinking, I'll switch to wine or something else.
That's probably going to help your productivity at markets. If you're able to do that at market, I don't see it happening, but I'm rooting for you.
And my chins. I'm hoping that it helps my chins.
So, more chins than a Chinese phone book. So, I have a friend that worked for Hiram Walker, and he was their field representative, and he had a very unusual job. They used to have a lot of field representatives in my state, for example. When he started, I think they had 12, and over the course of his career with them, and I've known him for years, they reduced it to 10, and then 8, and then 6, and when they got down to 6, they fired everybody but him and his boss. And they ended up covering the whole state. But he learned a lot about liquor. Obviously, they had training just like you would for any other product. And one of the things that they taught him, and that he was supposed to share the knowledge, is that when you drink, if you use a mixer that has sugar in it, any mixer that has sugar in it, or there was some other, like a fruit juice, that kind of thing, that causes your hangover. He said if you drink scotch or bourbon or vodka, no hangover. He said it's the sugar that people mix with the booze.
I feel like we've known that for a long time. I think a lot of people know that, but some people just do it anyways because they just like sweet drink. Like I don't do any mix. If I'm doing a mixer, it's only club soda.
Yeah, because this guy could drink all night, wake up, put a suit and tie on, feel like $1 million. While everybody's, when we were young bucks, everybody else suffering from.
Well, so we still do that at market. And here's what I've noticed is a couple things. The practice is important because when we're doing it more often, it is easier. But there's also, because at market, we're waking up so early to get to market, you're still drunk. Like first thing in the morning, like I feel great. Like I'm like witty and funny. And it's because I'm still socially lubricated.
I don't know this to be true, but I've heard many times that tequila stays in your system for, depending on how much you drink, for up to 7 days. You don't necessarily still feel the buzz, but the tequila, you could literally blow through an alcohol sobriety test and still blow drunk a couple of days after you had the tequila. You had an
That's
excessive amount.
horrible. That's really bad.
Yeah. I don't know that that's true. Not necessarily.
Yeah, I know who's
facts.
going to look it up for us.
Yeah.
Alex will look it up. So I've got a little bar, not trick, but a little bar trivia or fact for you, Tom, that you can use when you get people that come in. Whiskey is spelled with an E when it comes from a country that has an E in the name of the country.
I've never known that. And I've always wondered because, if you go to Google something, you don't know which way to spell it. So,
yeah.
So
Japanese whiskey is spelled without the E. Canadian is spelled without the E.
Let's see it. Pull it up.
American, Irish, the other whiskeys, if it's got E in the name of the country, then it would be in whiskey.
Interesting.
All right, we have an update. No, you're not on there.
You have an update on the
tequila things. Yeah, here we go. All right, so what do we got? Alcohol been detected on your breath for up to 24 hours. Wait, you looked at tequila specifically? Oh. So urine for 48 hours, saliva 24 hours, hair 90 days.
Good grief. My hair's never sober.
Yeah.
No.
All right. There you have it. All
if
right.
you believe it. So, Tom, how much of that type of use of AI are you finding yourself using?
I've started to use AI in place of a web browser. If I'm looking up, recently we all have seen a lot of political facts that are being thrown around by people about the Doge, what their findings, what they're uncovering. And so you see all these crazy posts that people put on social media or email to you, or I've received some in newsletters. And AI is keeping up pretty well. It'll dispel incorrect things. And if you search for it, I literally just copy and paste the claim. Or if it's a meme, I literally just take the meme, download the meme, say, try and transcribe this. It does that first. Then I type, is that true? And in 20 seconds, I have the answer to the question.
Now, are you doing that inside Google or going to ChatGPT or some other model? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm using ChatGPT a lot.
I have the paid version of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And I really don't know what the difference, I don't know that there's a significant difference. Let's put it that way.
Of the paid?
Yeah.
It's more. Well, if you have it do any heavy lifting, you'll know right away. It'll say you've already processed too many things, or that's not the right terminology. It can only analyze so much. So we have the paid version for me, Jonathan, and Craig, because we use it so much. And we're now incorporating it into spreadsheets for data enrichment, like product enrichment. I mean, amongst all your regular stuff.
Have you created any images with it that you've tried to sell?
So we actually did create some that we do sell. We were going to make a big push towards that. The problem we have is that most of our stuff is very large format, right? Up to 84 inches. But for our tempered glass program is 40 by 60. So we wanted to come up with a line specifically just for AI generated imagery. The problem is that even though you have an upscale prompt to increase the size and resolution, it only takes you so far. And it just isn't capable yet of putting out resolution big enough for such large format. Otherwise, we'd be all over that.
The other thing, if you try to add graphics, copy in with the images that you create, probably one of the craziest things about AI is it can't spell. If you tell it to say, "Happy birthday, Gabe," it might spell happy with 4 P's. And
which is crazy.
Yeah.
Because it's also correcting our spelling.
Here it is, the smartest computer in the world, and it can't spell happy.
But there's just certain things. So there's a concept called hallucination where AI hallucinates things and just makes shit up out of thin air. So like any time of like factual stuff like you're using in your business, you have to like have a human check any output by AI because it hallucinates often. The other thing is like, especially for imagery, like it has a problem with hands. Like it merges fingers or it makes like missing fingers or like it doesn't do hands well.
Sometimes it puts hands on shoulders.
Yeah, all that weird shit.
When there's not an arm connected, the other person standing next to the other person, their arms will be hanging at their side, and up on their other shoulder, there's a hand.
So several years ago, we started using AI to generate headshots for us. So like everybody on our staff has that email signature with the headshot and whatever your title and contact info and stuff. But we're all in the same like gray suit. And it's great. We were trying to get a photographer here to take photos of everybody. No, Alex, you weren't around back then and you're way too expensive. But we had people quoting us like $3,000, $4,000. And I'm like, you're out of your mind. And so later that night, I was scrolling TikTok and found this website and it's called Headshot Pro. And you upload like 20 pictures of yourself from different angles. And it'll output like 200 images for you, like very well done. And you can preset, like, so for my organization, I preset these 2 types of outfits, like gray professional suit and white shirt. And then I select 3 of 100 different backgrounds. And the backgrounds change, but it's like the theme of the background. So it'll be like library or outdoors or things like that. And then and we love it. It's so simple to use.
So that's the picture that's on your signature on your email?
Yep.
Internally at our company, we call that Gabe's glamour shot.
Yeah. Tilt your head.
Yeah.
And it also pops up when I call you.
Yeah.
And also all of us are getting credit cards not credit cards, business cards with our faces on them. I'm so excited. Yeah. I have to show you. So Tom, I don't think you've met Craig. So Craig is our new CRO and he's, an idiot like us and likes to play around and goof off. And so we're like designing the new business card or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then I told him I don't like close-ups. So he's like, how about this one?
Oh my God. You look like Freddie Mercury in that one.
It's so bad. I told him I need like an extra hour in therapy for that.
That's funny. And what is his role?
Chief Revenue Officer. So all things sales and marketing, anything revenue driving.
Nice.
Well, that example of it spelling happy with multiple P's, I think that makes sense to me because these GPTs are getting their information from the stuff that's on the internet. And so when you think about how many times people are saying happy birthday to somebody else on social media or on whatever. Yeah. I mean, that's very common.
Yeah.
And like, I don't generally wish Tom a happy birthday on the internet, but or maybe I do on Facebook or something like that. But a lot of people will do that kind of thing, happy with extra letters. And so if the example is overwhelmingly this way, then the output can be overwhelmingly that way also, because it's just, it's not necessarily thinking, it's just sort of regurgitating the average of what it's picking up out there in the world.
Well, I would like to believe that was true, Joe, but the things that it misspells, it'll have letters superimposed over other letters and, just there's a lot of errors. And so what we've started doing is just creating the artwork and adding the graphics after the fact. So, just dropping them in on top of the art.
And so you're using the graphics for advertising
We're do everything really. Well, we celebrate team members' birthdays, and a lot of times we'll create birthday cakes. With sometimes it'll have 3 or 4 names if the people all have their birthdays in a 2 or 3 day slot. We'll create a cake that's a theme. For example, we have one guy that loves to boat and that sort of thing, and so we made a sofa that was sitting in a marina kind of thing, and near a fishing boat, and had a price tag on the sofa, and just cute things, and people really appreciate it. It's really kind of makes it feel good that you took the effort and time to
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, one of your ads that I really love is the barely keeping your head above water image.
Yeah.
And I assume that you made that using one of the ChatGPT creators.
Actually, that was made before ChatGPT. That was a piece of artwork we found, but I agree with you. It looks just like something that's ChatGPT, but we actually dropped several different images in together to come up with that. So that was probably 3 or 4 months before we started using ChatGPT.
Okay.
And then we redid it with a ChatGPT version, which was actually even a little better.
I like how softwares that we already pay for are incorporating AI free of charge. So like Photoshop, for example, has an entire
generative fill.
Thank you. Yeah, that's come in handy a lot for our artwork. NetSuite, which is the ERP we use, has 225 uses of AI inside the platform, no extra charge.
Wow.
That's really cool. And there's no way, like, you're never going to use them all, but it's cool that it's being incorporated that way.
So, have you used Zoom? I know this platform we're on now is not Zoom, but do you use Zoom?
Mm-hmm.
Or Microsoft Teams?
Both.
Okay, so they now create very concise summaries. Have you seen that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the note takers.
Yeah, they're excellent. They'll give it to you.
Yeah.
They'll either give you a complete transcription or a summary. So
yeah, with action items and the whole nine.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I've used Fathom for that. And I was amazed at how you could start a conversation and then switch to something else, talking about something else, and a half an hour later come back to the original thing, and it's able to connect all of that.
That's cool.
Even though you have this huge gap between different parts of this conversation.
Mm-hmm. You're right. Sometimes I'll have something that I worked on before that has evolved, and I'll go back to the original chat where I created or researched whatever the item was and pick up where I left off. Add more facts, that sort of thing. Get a new resolution, whatever the issue was. So the thing about, as it relates to our industry, the furniture industry, that I think dealers are struggling with is how, independent retail furniture stores don't, they literally don't have time to open their mail. The owners, they're so overwhelmed. They're the HR manager, they're the advertising director, they train salespeople, they manage the drivers, and they're out on the floor selling, and so they don't have time to, go to dinner with their family, let alone. I'm talking about independent, small, medium-sized furniture stores.
Mm-hmm.
And there's very few exceptions to this, where they have enough people and enough staff to give them the freedom to go out and research and design a way for AI to assist them. So when I work with those people, generally the only thing I try to do is train them quickly on the real simple ways to use AI to make their life a little bit easier. Even if it's just making signs for inside their store, or coming up with a legal contract for an employment contract for a commission salesperson. If they don't want to get on the phone with an attorney and try to explain to the attorney what they're looking for, they can do it in ChatGPT and then turn around and send that to an attorney and just have him tweak it for their state. But you can actually put state-specific information in those type things too. They can ask if they have just recently had a client that had an issue with a consumer they resolved the consumer's issue, but they were still concerned about potential legal issues after the fact because it was a very difficult consumer. That's a good word. We'll use that. And so they were going to refund the customer's money, but they wanted a release. And so I said, well, just run it in AI. Just put all the information in AI. AI immediately produced a release form. They used that for the client to sign off on. So, if they sent that to an attorney, it cost them $500, to get that letter. So, and they used it state specific. They put their state information in, and just literally 2 or 3 sentences what they were looking for, and they had the document. So, but as far as rolling it into their day-to-day, using plugins and that for inventory and all that, it's still pretty.
It's just so limitless. Like, and that's what makes it difficult is like your own brain getting creative with it. So like Craig wanted a heat map of our revenues. And so ran a, actually NetSuite was able to do it, but it was like, just put in a spreadsheet of transactions between this date and this date, where they're located, and it'll put out a heat map. Like there's so many uses.
Does it put it out in Excel?
No, the input is Excel. You can ask for whatever output you want.
Okay. But by default, does it kick it out in Excel?
No, you have to ask. Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't want to map in Excel. I mean, I guess I'd want a JPEG or PDF.
Well, I meant like I don't know if you've ever seen those graphs that Excel creates. They're basically heat maps of data. You can just apply the color form of your choice. Green is either the biggest or the smallest, depending on what you're looking for.
No, we wanted a geographical map.
Right.
Representation. Yeah. So
where's your business?
Well, I didn't see it. That's why I pay him.
Typical.
I mean, I can make a guess, right? Like from Texas, follow the coast all the way up the East Coast, right? Like no question, without even looking at it. But I think for him, it was more about finding where there's population that there isn't a significant amount of revenue.
That's another thing we have to be careful of. The easy capabilities to create all this data now. You can get analysis paralysis pretty quickly by trying to.
What are you doing with the data?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's got to be meaningful. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, in his case, it's which reps suck, which areas don't have reps. Like, where do we need to put pressure? Essentially.
So it was valuable.
Yeah, it's very valuable.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are you fully staffed? You got reps all the way across the country now?
For the most part. I mean, there's always some holes here and there. And they're just empty for lack of bandwidth. Because I'm still doing that element to it. Craig is kind of coming in, taking over that piece. But that's a transition, right? Because these reps know me for 20 plus years. Not just the current reps, but the potential reps, right? And so it's a transition, but ideally, we will have every state full. I mean, we're always like 90% covered. But then there's, territories we don't even think of, like Saudi Arabia, right? Canada, otherwise known as gay North Dakota. Sorry, my Canadian friends. TikTok is
they'll send hockey players down here to beat you up.
Yeah. Well, my hockey players will take care of that. That was wild. I can't believe we won that.
3 fights in 9 seconds.
9 seconds.
Yeah, last night. So
I saw it was like a AI like voiceover dubbed of the coach, like press conference, and he was like, well, Trump called us in the locker room, wanted to talk to the guys, and like, it was hilarious, just ragging on him.
There's speaking of AI, there's a much higher, a lot more use of deep fakes now. I don't know if you saw,
Oh yeah.
you know, there are actors that are very upset because they've made deep fakes of them endorsing political issues, you know, especially just here recently. They'll take a very liberal actress, for example, and have her talking about how wonderful she thinks the initiatives of the conservative side have been, you know,
Right.
and people believe it. I mean,
Yeah, I think the populace needs to like really kind of get educated on what's possible. And it's really bad for like I think older people who are really out of touch with technology because like the scams are so good now.
they really are. Yeah.
They're so
Well,
good.
We get
and
hit.
younger people who may not, may not realize they should question stuff.
We get hit with phishing uh, scams probably 4 a day. Various people.
Hmm.
Password changes. Change your password now. You
Yeah.
know, that's where they're, ransomware people trying to get into your system.
We get stuff from people that exist in our company.
Oh, we do too. I get things from
That
my,
shit's
I get
crazy.
emails from myself, Gabe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That shit's crazy with the correct domain.
yeah, yeah. Well, and Rob just recently said, I need a favor, you know, go and buy iTunes gift cards, that old one.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
I need all these numbers, and so on and so forth. And you'd be amazed how many people we've got our people very well trained. They don't do any of that. At least we don't think they do. And but they do report it all. So all of a sudden, I got 25 emails showing that Rob had asked for these iTunes gift cards.
Yeah.
You know,
And then, but what do you do with that? You don't know where it's come from. You don't
I
know
turn
who it
around
is.
and I send it to our email provider, and they track it down. Actually, they've started to track things down and block entire
IPs.
not just the URL, but even the servers. So if they recognize a server, let's say that's in India, that's become known for phishing or whatever, and there have been some in Pakistan, some in Russia, because they always get back to me and tell me where they were from, and they blocked the entire server.
So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've tried going down those rabbit holes and have had no success. And what do we do with this? So because it takes one dumb employee to fuck shit up. And now you're being held hostage for $5 million.
My son is in charge of um, internet. I'll say internet security. It actually is deeper than that for a Fortune 500 company. And I ask him how he sleeps at night. I don't know how he does, because it's constantly every minute. They've got offices all over the world. So he has to stay in touch with all of those people and all of their security people. They've got people they had people in Ukraine. They had 700 employees in the Ukraine when the war broke out.
You think about a company like American Express. How do they convey the message to tens of thousands of employees, not to click on a link and, inside? I mean, it just seems like an impossible task.
Right.
Have you seen the tests that you can actually, and we have contracted with these companies that provide you with um, a template, and you can type in any email address that you want, and they'll spoof the email and send it to um, your list for you. And once you've sent it, anybody that clicks on the link, nothing happens. They aren't aware that they've clicked a nefarious link. It just stops, and they have no idea. Now, the goal would be they have to report that.
Educate that person.
Well, they have to report that. Hey, I got this thing, I clicked on it, nothing happened. Did I, open Pandora's box here? But but the most important test is A, do they click on it? And if they do they report it? So we get a report showing everybody that clicked on it, and then another report that we create ourselves, how many people forwarded that issue in. And I'm proud to say the last 3 tests we sent out, we didn't get a single click.
Nice. I really like that. Can you send me whoever's doing that?
Sure. Yeah.
Please.
Because the people don't reply to other emails either now.
Yeah.
They just stop replying to all of them.
Just send an email from a customer, like no reply.
Anytime something comes into us that says invoice, just delete that immediately. We don't need those. Definitely phishing. They want your money. That's all they want.
Great.
So,
Tom, you and your organization always seem to have a good kind of finger on the pulse of the furniture retail industry. It's kind of your job to do that. So what is it like out there compared to a year ago, 2 years ago, compared to 2008, just in general? What are you seeing?
Well, I've been in the business for decades, and as a sales rep and executive, and then with PFP for quite some time. And I've been through a lot. I've seen a lot and experienced a lot. And it's not just the challenge of business being slow that has retailers down. As far, I'm not talking about in sales. I'm talking about their whole attitude about the industry. They're pretty down about it because retailers will tell us, they might not tell their vendors this because they understand that it's like telling their vendor they can't pay their bills, but they'll tell us that it's just not fun anymore, because they have so many things that they have to deal with now that they didn't have to deal with in the past. And consumers, have become much more demanding than they used to be, in the store. And also retailers are sick of having people walk in and shove their phone in their face and, saying, hey, I can get this, $30 cheaper from Salt Lake City, and they just hate that. Obviously, anybody would. They went to the trouble to buy it, bring it into their store, price it, advertise it. They've got a professional salesperson there ready to present it, share all the facts. They'll deliver it in their truck. It's going to be checked out before it goes out, yet somebody will buy it off the internet and risk it coming into their home on some random truck after being shipped all the way across the country as a single item and hope it's in good shape to save $30. And it's so frustrating to retailers to have to go through that. I don't blame them. I mean, it's a horrible thing to have to deal with.
That is frustrating. But like as a consumer, because I know it's protected, if something's wrong with it, they're going to take care of it.
Well,
but it's not just saving $30. It's saving a going to pick up. It's saving the hassle of meeting aggressive salespeople. So the environment's changing, and it's an educated consumer. I mean, I hate to say that because our business is brick and mortar, but
100% correct, and I'm guilty of that myself because I don't have time to go and look for the widget that I want to buy, and I'll jump online, find somewhere to get it. We all do. We're all guilty of it. That doesn't make it any easier for the retailers.
No, for sure makes it more challenging, but those challenges make us stronger, right? But you have to be willing to adapt. And so like, this industry, for the most part, especially when it comes to independent, are slow to move. And look, we have the same problem. It's a bandwidth issue, right? Because we're the janitor, we're the chef, we're the busboy, we're the cook, right? But you just got to do the things, right? Get educated on things, get competitive, take lower margins, whatever it is. Like your company's on the line, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, right?
Well, you're 100% correct. I mean, they have to stay with it. I when I meet with people that are trying to improve their business, I'll give them examples of various retailers that that are taking advantage of social media. And then instead of just putting factory images up on their Facebook page and hoping people follow them and show great interest in these factory photos, they have to learn, that you have to put content up that people actually would want to see.
Mm-hmm.
Support the local Boys and Girls Club, post pictures of them, giving them a check for $500, and all their parents are going to become instant fans, and support, a Boy Scout troop or Girl Scout troop, or, if they're selling Girl Scout cookies, let them set up in the store and put that on your Facebook page and post that they're selling Girl Scout cookies in your store, and
that's such great advice. And there's so many guerrilla style tactics that they need to be incorporating, right?
Well, you all are the best at it, really. I mean, when I think back to the first furniture, I think it was the first furniture market that you showed at, and you and your brother went out and tell the story, what you did with the power washer. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, okay. So, and thank you for the compliment. Yeah. So we, just to be clear, Jonathan and I own a marketing firm that focuses on guerrilla marketing. So when you bring those concepts into a very dated, stale industry like the furniture industry, they make a big impact. But um, essentially, we rigged up the back of a truck with two 55-gallon drums full of water and a pressure washer, and we made a stencil out of steel, right? So whatever it is you're marketing, so XYZ furniture, you cut that out of steel using lasers or water, whatever. It costs $200. Just go get it done. And you pressure wash the sidewalks around your town. So your logo is literally everywhere. And it became such a, it happened by default, actually. We wanted to use spray chalk. So we were working with the NFL, and we are going to make stencils for spray chalk. And the NFL's super conservative when it comes to this type of stuff. And they're like, well, I know it washes off of the rain, but it's still defacing property. And so that's how we ended up coming up with the pressure washer idea. And it ended up being our best selling service. So in Houston, like any of the high traffic areas, downtown, midtown, uptown, like it looked like fucking NASCAR on the sidewalks.
Well, I think you told me it's not illegal to wash a sidewalk.
It's not illegal to wash a sidewalk. There is, however, both in Houston and in High Point, where we may have utilized these services frequently, there are new city ordinances which are absolutely fucking ridiculous. And if High Point Market Authority is listening, I'm fucking talking to you. I'm sorry, Tom, I don't know your relationship with them, but both cities have created city ordinances that you have to catch the runoff water if you're pressure washing, which is absolutely ridiculous because it rains and people have to pressure wash buildings and sidewalks and stuff to just keep it pretty. And so those laws were established because of our efforts. But what I find most fascinating is that years later, High Point Market Authority was doing that in High Point.
Oh no, yeah.
I thought that was, it's a bit of a like, what's the word? Flattery, but I don't need fucking flattery. Like my ego's good enough. Like, if you love my idea, let me do it. But we did get pulled over when we were doing it in High Point, and the officer pulled us over. He's like, we've got a bunch of complaints. I'm like, okay. And he's like, well, he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, this is what we're doing. And he said, show me. So we did one in front of him, and he's like on his walkie talkie, and he's like trying to find something illegal. And I'm like, listen, man, the NFL's attorneys, I'm sure, are significantly more advanced than your little High Point department. They've already looked this over. And so he sees what we're doing. He sees us do it. He goes, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Let us go. But, the following years, City of High Point put out that city ordinance.
So what's the next sidewalk wash idea?
Well, I wouldn't give it here, but there's been a lot of other things like that. I think that one got the most attention. But this sounds fucking terrible. Those guerrilla tactics take work. There's a lot of effort involved. and there's low money involved, which is why they're advantageous for those independent dealers. For who we are today, I don't know that we have that kind of bandwidth to implement, but we do have the cash to say hire Tango Media and get those ads in front of people everywhere they go online, or with Home Accents today, having that leaderboard ad on every e-newsletter, every article, their homepage, everywhere like that. So that is easier to do, but not as cost effective. And I know that sounds terrible, but it is what it is. But for the independent dealer, they're like, just Google guerrilla marketing. That's it. And just go look at all the crazy ideas that people have done to inspire that those creative juices, right? Like one thing, when we were in Vegas, we used to stamp our booth number on dollar bills and we drop them all over the market, restrooms, elevators, escalators, the terrace, whatever. And people would come in like, I saw this, like, great, I'm glad you're here. Let me show you why we advertise that way. So one spinoff of that is go get a shitload of ones and make change for all your employees and pay everything you do in cash and stamp your stuff and get those dollar bills in circulation within your community. It doesn't have a huge reach, but it has a reach and it costs nothing.
Right. That's a good idea. I mean, if you consider the fact that each furniture store should evaluate their acquisition cost, very few do, and
it's hard. It's hard to calculate.
Yeah, if they do, well, it really isn't hard to calculate. If they have a door counter and know what their ad budget was, it's just whatever their budget was divided by the number of parties, not individuals, but the number of parties that came through their door.
I guess you're right. The cost per acquisition's easier. The return on each of the platforms is the difficult part.
Well, no, that's very difficult.
That's the difficult part.
But your acquisition costs globally are significantly more than $1. I can assure you that. Yeah. They used to say, this is 20, 25 years ago, they used to say it's $4 or $5 a customer back then, and now it's probably $15 a customer.
There's a lot more competition now.
Yeah, well, the way things have become fragmented, used to be there wasn't as many opportunities to get to the people. So,
right.
One of the things I think people really miss out on is and I heard you all talk about this before, so I won't belabor it, but doing quality things on a local basis. I think we can't stress that enough. I know a client that on his own, without anybody pushing him to do it, he just decided to give a recliner away. Got the vendor to pay for half the recliner. He didn't even ask him to pay for all of it. So he paid half and the vendor paid half. And he put it on Facebook. He made a little video and said, like our page or comment on this post. So it was comment, like our page, or share this post. Any one of the three. And you're qualified to win this recliner. And this has been a couple years ago, so I can't remember the exact number, but I want to say he got 27,000 contacts. This is a town of 3,500 people,
Wow.
Yeah. So, and that was, he didn't have it out there long. His deadline was 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, no, people love contests, right? Yeah. So and we're super cheap with it. Like when we were creating our neon, like this stuff that we now sell, right? We wanted to come up with Instagrammable phrases. We put it out there and we're like, I don't remember what it was. It's like, anybody that posts something that we end up using, we're going to give you $20 Starbucks gift card or whatever it was. It was like super cheap. And like within 2 hours, we had 500 responses. It was like, it was too much. Or when we did like the koozie thing, and those koozies are fantastic, right? Like we still hear about the well-hung koozies. That was the same thing. It was like, give us some ideas. Winner gets $50. Yeah.
participated in some of those when you all first started doing
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I mean,
It's
it's
fun.
you know.
It's fun. It's got the reach, So it's
And
just about, go ahead.
it's flattering to see your suggestion out there in something that becomes a product.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a couple of people. I told them I was going to be on this, and they told me to ask you a question. So I hope this doesn't embarrass either of you. But what's the deal with you two together? I mean, I know Joe just recently got married, and I'm not sure if your wife knows about your relationship with Gabe.
I am so glad you asked that question.
Yeah. So
This is where we
everybody wants to know the
insert.
truth. I mean, what's going
This
on?
this is the part where we insert our friend Alex, who runs this whole podcast, is going to he's had a lot of time on his hands and he's playing with AI. So we're
Right.
going to insert the clip right here.
That's ridiculous.
Oh, it's happening.
People know. I mean, you can't hide it anymore. You might as well come out. Share it.
But I can't share screen and all that.
Yeah, I mean,
It's so exhausting to keep hiding.
I know, just
everything.
give it up. I mean, the world's different today. People won't judge you. It's okay. So,
All right.
Are you gonna play it now?
I'm gonna try to. Oh,
it's
it was.
terrible.
Here it is.
It's terrible.
I got a feeling this is going to be a little scary.
No,
very
it's
scary.
It's so great.
No,
It's
terrible.
so great.
There's nothing good about this at all.
Okay, wait a second. It's so great. Wait, where it goes away when I try to oh, there
Thank
it goes.
goodness.
I need to put it on desktop too. It doesn't go.
Good.
Fuck you, dude. How do I share screen? How do I share screen?
Just like, please,
Present.
please.
All right.
And then share screen, and then entire screen. Wait, I'm not letting it.
It's gonna make me
Press yes to the Google Chrome,
it's gonna make me restart it.
and then use your mouse.
No. But it's gonna want to quit and reopen. It's not gonna do. You gotta stitch it in.
Okay, send it to me, and I'll open it on mine.
You have it.
I don't have it on here.
He's the one that created it. When you just send it to me.
Send it to me. I can't look in the group. I was trying to look in the group chat here, but it won't pop up.
Has he already sent it to you, Tom? Is that what prompted
No, I
you
haven't
to
seen it.
bring this up?
That's crazy.
No, I haven't seen it. No.
All right. Well, what were the other things that your friends asked you to ask us?
Where you get your cool market outfits, Joe?
Oh, all right.
Are they loudmouth pants and that sort of thing? Some of your patterned things that you wear.
It could be anywhere. You know where a good source is JCPenney, believe it or not. So you go to JCPenney, and every time I go to a mall, I go to JCPenney and I look at the clearance rack, and you'd be
The
surprised.
clearance rack.
The
It's
stuff-
always
Oh yeah,
always
never,
a clearance rack. Same here. Always a clearance rack.
yeah. Never pay full price for any of that stuff, and
Okay.
it becomes an advertising expense. But,
Hold on.
TikTok.
So here's what's happening with Joe and I. We're gonna add to stage. It's so good. Oh my god.
Oh, that is classic. That'll be good. Yeah. That
No.
start any rumors, really? Yeah. So
Oh my
what
gosh.
about you, Gabe? You're like Mr. Fashion at Market. How do you do it? Inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah. So I also shop the clearance rack, but I do it at black suit stores. So like suit stores that cater to the black market. Unless I'm like in Vegas. Vegas has stuff, but it's like overpriced and I don't like spending a lot of money for clothes. So like a K&G, right? I don't know if you guys have K&G where y'all are at, but I'll go there, go to clearance rack, see what can be like worked in, right? Because some of the stuff is like ridiculous, you can't do it. But some of the stuff, if you pair it with the right stuff, it can be done. But ultimately, the real secret sauce is the confidence. If you think you can pull something off, you can, but you have to really believe it.
Well, not blowing any smoke. You always look very sharp at markets, and
Thank you.
kind of make the rest of us all look like traditional old fools, compared to the way you dress.
Well, I mean, but like the furniture industry, everybody's dressed the same.
Yeah,
Like it's literally the same.
it's fashion business.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in art. I gotta be flamboyant.
Yeah.
Flamboyantly straight. let me just clear that up after that whole video and everything. Joe's a looker. I mean, out of one eye, but he's a looker nonetheless.
Those are from the mall that you're wondering, how does this mall stay open? That's got
That's
the
where you get
stores
it.
that you
That's
buy
where
these
you get-
suits.
That's right. Yeah. That's where you get the good stuff.
How do they stay open with just a Bath and Body Works and a movie theater?
Yeah.
We have furniture retailers that go into a lot of those malls, and they might lack because the buildings are very cheap. Where the mall's dine mall, so they'll grab an end of a mall. They'll be in there for 4 or 5 years, and then the mall decides to renovate and throws everybody out and rebuilds, and so they're going to lose their lease. They'll ask us to come in and run store closing sale for them. Happens pretty often, actually. Sometimes we can do it successfully. Sometimes we can't because they haven't been there long enough. But we do see a lot of those. So.
And how often does it happen where somebody opens with the intention of closing? Like I want to have a grand opening and I want to be open the minimum amount of time I can to then have a going out of business sale, so I can get the benefit of these two big sales. And
well, it happens frequently amongst one non-American culture of furniture retailer in this country. And they don't typically call us because that is their model. They go in, they open a new brand. Frequently, they have a number of relatives. Sometimes there's as many as 4 or 5 brothers, and sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes a sister. And each of the brothers has a store, and we've seen it where there's one pot. They share all the revenue and profits so that the one who's closing, doesn't have to worry about an income until he can pop up somewhere else. And it happens. It's very common in the DC area, up along the East Coast, West Coast. It's very common. It's very common in Gabestown, Houston. It's very.
We actually, and we're not going to go into what demographic that is, obviously,
No.
but I will say that the greatest moment in the last 2 months of my life was getting a call from one of your managers to send product to, and that particular retailer wouldn't buy product from either his sales rep or his design consultant. Wouldn't buy Classy Art because we're Jewish owned.
It still happens, Gabe. I hate to see it.
I know.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
I haven't experienced anti-Semitism until the last few years.
Yeah.
And it's like super real. And it's like it happens regularly now. It like the first time it fucked me up a little bit. But we're capitalists. We're just trying to sell product. We're trying to help you make money, whatever. So when we hear that, it fucks with us. But I just wanted to be a fly on the wall when all those Classy Art boxes came rolling in that store. I'm not gonna mention who it was, but
Well, the only thing.
God is good.
The only thing I can think that makes people anti-Semitic is, yeah. I missed that. I'm sorry.
He said cons.
Oh yeah. The only thing that I can think of that makes people anti-Semitic is pure jealousy, quite frankly, because as a group, Jewish people are some of the most successful, smartest, brightest, the best engineers, the best scientists, certainly the best merchants. I mean, it's it's uncanny, the success. I mean, if you took every culture in the world and you somehow put a metric on that, I'm sure that the Jews of the world are at the top of the list in almost every category.
Well, yeah, I don't disagree. And so, but what's fascinating? So I'm a Cohen, which is the Jewish of all Jew last name, but I'm also a Christian,
Mhm.
and so that's an interesting dynamic when it comes to these things. But I'm a capitalist first. I got children to feed, and the 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 thing that surprises me the most is that those people in the business that have an issue with it, and this is the first time I'm talking about it publicly, and I don't know that it's the right decision, but I'm gonna speak from the heart. We do a lot of business with a lot of people that maybe shouldn't necessarily do business, or there's multiple people in that group. There's those people who are capitalists first that continue to do business, and there are people that don't because of the politics of it. And the reality is that when you are in the Middle East, when you are there, or even here, like we are cousins, and I have tons of customers that, hey, we're cousins. Like that's not us. That's just the fucking government's talking shit and all the stuff pushed down from the social media. That's propaganda to make us hate each other. But no, like we grow up together over there, and we grow up together peacefully. It's just the propaganda because we need to be able to have a reason to finance another war. It's awful. It's awful.
Well, honestly, I'm sorry that happens. I don't understand it. I never will. So,
Yeah.
you know, so,
It does. I will say the benefit is it helps me understand racism that I haven't been privy to, if that makes sense. Because even though I'm brown, I look white as fuck, right? So, but from the Mexican side and the Israeli side, but it helps me understand the racism from Hispanics, from blacks, from different uh, other people that scream about it all the time. That a lot of us, as somebody who's like absolutely not racist, that like my entire network is full of every culture that exists, right? Like my friend group's one of the most diverse I've ever seen. So I don't understand it because we all have an egocentric perspective of the world. We think others think like us and the world is like us. But having that happen, and I don't know if you know this, there was a boycott classy movement about a year ago, which we've resolved. But having all that happen helps me empathize with other cultures that have gone through that growing up, and me maybe not recognizing it. So there's a part of me that's glad that it happened because now I understand, you know?
reasonable. Yeah. Yeah. And you also, you need to know who your friends are and keep your friends close and your enemies closer. So, I mean, you have to do business with everybody in our world. So best way to get even is to sell your haters. If somebody truly doesn't like you for whatever reason.
I don't disagree with that, but
Yeah.
I also don't have enemies.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I really try to take a page out of Jesus' book and just love on everybody unconditionally. I understand you have hatred for me. I get it. I know that you're doing the best you can with the cards you're dealt. I try to understand that and be empathetic of that. And I want to show you unconditional love. Regardless, you're a human being. We are the same
Well,
race.
I saw you show unconditional love for Joe just a few minutes ago here. So
Oh, that Joe, he's sure
Oh
got a
no,
pretty,
it's
in
conditional.
fact, I think that's good. You know,
he got a pretty mouth.
it's a brave new world. Um, you know, at Market, um, I started in the early '80s, and I am very, very proud to say that everybody, all the old guys back then, when I was a very young man, that mentored me, that just took me under their arm and treated me like a son, really. Terry Schneidman was a guy from Phoenix, Arizona, and Terry took me under his wing and taught me the ropes. And Terry was just an absolute gentleman to me, and loved to rib me, loved to tease me. And I'm going to go ahead and tell this story about Terry. When I was very young, we were at the Dallas Furniture Market. And I know this is going to come back to haunt me, but I'm going to go ahead and tell it anyway.
How young is very young? Are you like 20s, 30s? What do you?
When I started, I was 21.
Okay.
Well, I turned 22 when I was assigned to territory. So I started as a sales rep when I was 22 years old. So we were in Dallas, and a bunch of us young guys went out to dinner somewhere. I think it was the restaurant where they cut your necktie off if you're wearing a necktie, and just some Western steakhouse. And Terry had invited me to room with him, which I was flattered because he had never had a roommate. And, he recognized that I was a new rep, broke, and he decided to be nice. And so we, were rooming together at the Anatole, which was very expensive back then. And I went out, got drunk, and came back into the room. And I mean, I was just absolutely exhausted and zoned out, and all I wanted to do was fall into bed, which is exactly what I did. Right on top of Terry. And true story. He was,
yes.
I fell, and Terry was about 5'3" and a little round man, and I couldn't get off of him. I was literally,
I bet,
toppling around on top of Terry, and he's screaming and yelling. And finally I get off, and he flips on the hotel light. His eyes were as big as saucers. And he's like, "What the F are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh shit, I hit the wrong bed," and so he told everybody at the showroom the next day the story about how he slept all night, the rest of the night with one eye open, and all these, it became the stuff of legend, about Terry and me. And the next market, he presented me with two brass bears that were about maybe 6-8 inches long. And let's just say that the two brass bears were doing what bears do to make little bears. And he presented this to me as a trophy, in recognition of our experience last market.
Oh yeah.
Took it in. So it was a great story. But anyway, these guys were so nice to me. And, I'll always appreciate what they did, So
I have a similar story. Similar but different. And you guys know all the characters. So Tom Ralph, rest his soul. You know Tom?
Sure.
Yeah. So Don Savage comes to work for us. He comes out of retirement, comes to work for Classy Art, and realizes Tom's part of the sales force. And he tells me this story. And I'm pretty sure Tom was still with us when he told me the story. And Tom was his sales manager at Berkline. And they're at a hotel, I don't know, market, on the road, whatever. So they're at a hotel, and Don gets a call. And, they're big drinkers like us, whatever. And so Don gets a call to his room phone. Remember, he used to call each other's rooms. And he's like, "Hey, Don, can you come help me with something?" Okay. So Don goes to his room, and Tom goes, and he has that real deep voice, can you help me? I pissed the bed. Can you help me flip the mattress? So Don's like, "Are you kidding?" So, okay, fuck it. All right, flip the mattress. Don's leaving. He goes, "Hey, Don. Hold on. Hold on. Hey, Don, can you help me flip the other one?" Sorry. Both of them. So, oh man.
back in the days of reversible mattresses, just to make a furniture point. Yeah. So, yeah.
Tom, what would you be doing if you weren't in the furniture industry? When you were 21 and before you decided to do this, where did you think you were going?
I always wanted to be a Chippendale. I thought I could probably make a lot of money.
A chipmunk?
A Chippendale.
A dancing chipmunk?
Yeah. Hey, it's never too late, Tom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never
My wife kind of chuckles every time I say that, but no. Honestly, I can answer your question. I always had a love. It's still a very, very, very serious hobby for me, but for photography. And thank God I didn't follow that path because, a photographer today can't make any money. Everybody's got a camera in their hand at all times. And Gabe, when you said the quotes that you got for taking pictures, I wasn't at all surprised by that because when photographers get a client today, they have to charge so much because they're not going to get another one for 2 weeks. It's just people just don't use photographers like they used to.
But you have quite a following.
I do.
Your YouTube drone footage has like 600,000% more than our podcast.
Can you share this on your YouTube channel?
I've got a pretty good following on YouTube, and I haven't done much with TikTok yet. And then I'm in some groups where we have 8,000 and 10,000 people in the groups. One of them that I started primarily, outdoor landscapes, that kind of thing. So it's fun. I don't do anything for money. I have people that want to hire me all the time, and I just tell them I'll do it free, and they're like, "What?" So, and I go do things for people free. Just have.
Hey, Alex, you're fired. Tom, we need some help in High Point.
I'll help you. I mean, I really will.
And what type of photography is your favorite?
Well, I did commercial photography. I actually owned a studio as an investment for about 5 or 6 years, and had a photographer, and we did a lot of commercial. Is the answer to your question? We did work for Southwest Airlines and AT&T and some other really big companies. And this was when film was still the platform. It was before digital, which if you think about it, that really wasn't that many years ago. Digital didn't come into its own until the resolutions, got to where they are today, so lighting used to be a big deal. Lighting was as big in commercial photography. Lighting was as big of an art as, composure and composition rather. And lighting was the art really. And, I did a whole series of presidential photos at the Hermitage that ended up in the Smithsonian, and they're still in the permanent presidential library in the Smithsonian. So,
oh shit!
Obviously,
bragging rights.
Obviously, I couldn't shoot a picture of Andrew Jackson, but I did pictures of his home and pictures of his personal effects, and handling Andrew Jackson's personal eyeglasses and his personal water fountain, or had a water jug with a little handle on it that was next to his bed, and dealing with all these things was really pretty cool.
I bet that is cool.
During doing archival black and white images of documents, and I did a lot of that work myself. The photographer did like portraits and that kind of thing that worked for me, but I did all the commercial stuff.
Yeah, cool. See, I don't remember Andrew because I know there's Michael and Tito. I know there's 5 of them. I didn't know that
Andrew was the only one with a beard. He had a big beard. Yeah,
LaToya.
He was not the most popular president. He had he's the one who drove the Indians on the Trail of Tears. And it's very big part of history, of course. But if you really dive into what his accomplishments were, they were pretty controversial. So,
and yet he's on money.
Oh yeah. And we'll be on there for years probably. So
Is Trump going to be on money?
I mean, how could he
well,
not?
Fast forward 100 years.
there's people with rubber stamps already putting his face over other faces, kind of like your idea.
I like that.
Yeah.
Or I've seen the rubber stamp on the back with the White House, and it says the stamp is Trump lives here.
Trump lives here. I've seen that.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. There's
Have you seen it in the wild, or you've seen it online?
No, online. I haven't seen it in the wild. They don't
I,
have.
I have not seen one go through my hands in a cash register either.
We need to help the cause.
I don't use cash very much anymore. Almost
Nobody
never.
does.
No.
Nobody does. Yeah.
Yeah, it's surprising how many places are no cash. Like you're not allowed to use cash at places, and
it
then
helps.
they'll turn around and charge you 3%
No, it helps.
if you use your credit card.
Yeah, because you're getting rid of the, it's loss prevention. Like it's getting rid of the scammer. Like when we were in college, we had a buddy that worked at Abercrombie and Fitch. I guess this would still work with credit card, but there's all kinds of scammers out there. But back then we used to go and we would like buy everything and we'd go to the register and he'd charge us for one thing and just bag it up.
Yeah. You can
And like there was a whole ring of,
not.
yeah, there was a whole ring of employees that did that. Yeah, but I guess you can do that with credit cards still. But like, I'm just not going to charge you for cash. Just give me the cash.
I think all those people that were doing that at that time, I think they all work for the federal government now. Yeah, there's, you perfect an art. You got.
Oh my God. So Sean and I have this like beef on TikTok and we're going back and forth and he's sending me all the left bullshit of like anti-Elon and how it's so bad and blah, and I'm sending him back all the other shit. It's like, it blows me away. Like, why wouldn't everybody be excited to know what they're finding? Like the corruption.
Well, it's a constitutional crisis, Gabe.
Yeah.
That's what everybody's saying. It's a constitutional crisis. I think they are kind of ramrodding through a lot of it and probably making some mistakes. They're moving pretty quick. I think that they could be more, a little more delicate in what they're doing.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, I heard something about that where the theory was you just get rid of everything. Get rid of all of it, goes down to zero, and then you start adding back. Like you pretty quickly figure out what things you can't live without, and then you start adding those back in. And I thought, well, that's an interesting concept if that's what, if that's a version of that is what's happening.
Well, you remember green bar computer printouts?
No.
Oh yeah.
They'd print with a dot matrix printer.
Yeah. I know.
Put them in a binder. And so I worked at Berkline in East Tennessee, and Charlie Shaughnessy, who had been with Burlington Furniture, which went out of business. Of course, they hired him to come in and run Berkline. And one of his first days there, he requested an employee printout. And, back in those days, you didn't have the ability to sort however you wanted to. Probably everything was alphabetical. But he did have it sorted by department. Okay. And he looked at each department, and there were summaries at the bottom of each sheet. And he had decided how many people he wanted to cut from the company. So he started with the A's on one page, and he just put a line through the number of people that he wanted to fire with no regard for whether they were a line employee, a supervisor, whether they'd been with the company for 30 years or 5 years or 5 minutes. So he just marked through that, starting with the A's going down. The next department, he would start with the Z's and go up, and the next department, the A's, and go down until he got the number he wanted. And he turned around and handed the report to his assistant and said, fire everybody that I've marked out. No appeals, no exceptions. And they did it. They fired everybody that he had marked out.
And that's how you survive so long, because your last name starts with an O.
I was right in the middle. Yeah. So he didn't fire any salespeople, but he did fire virtually every department: manufacturing, advertising, service. He fired people from almost sewing, frameworks, finishing, all the different departments. He took a percentage of each one, and everybody was so distraught, and everybody knew this was going to be the end of the company, and how can we ever survive? What an idiot. And I'm not patting him on the back. I think it was done with complete disregard for what employees did, and I thought it was foolish. However, we never missed a beat. We never slowed down. It didn't change our quality. It didn't make the company significantly more profitable. It did make it a little more profitable at that time, but it was, for all intents and purposes, it was a successful move on his part. I'm still shocked to this day, but it's surprising. People will step up when they're given the opportunity, and a lot of people were given opportunities because other people were terminated.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a similar story with when Elon bought X and how they had some giant building full of servers, and he said, let's get rid of all these. And whoever it was that was in charge of the server said, you can't do that. We got to wind them down. That would take months. And he just went there and started unplugging everything.
Servers?
And yeah, servers. And within a couple of days had the whole thing unhooked. And
well, they're all redundant, so he knew that. And it's probably, everything was probably would switch from their east server to their west server or whatever, and he's no dummy,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the guy's brilliant. I mean, all the hate that's out there. So I'm a big fan, even pre all this. I'm a fan.
I am,
but
too.
Like
Yeah.
he like the bullseye on his back is so big right now, because he's cutting funding from all the people that were in charge of the corruption. I don't want to get into politics, but we're right in it.
It's going to be interesting.
I thought it was
to shake out. I know that. They'll drill down. They're firing at a high level right now, and they're discovering issues. But I think at some point they'll probably drill down to the finite levels of who created these issues, where the fraud is, where the money went.
Mm-hmm.
I have to think that a lot of that money that went into these ridiculous initiatives probably was just a hunch on my part, but probably CIA money, that ended up, used to fund a coup in some small country, or, if what we see on movies is accurate, put it that way.
Yeah. They put it in your face.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tom, what was it about Berkline that was so magical? Because you run into so many people today that worked at Berkline, like people that are high level, that have had very successful careers, that all kind of ties back to Berkline.
It's funny that you asked that, because there are a half a dozen companies in the industry that seem to be factories for creating good people. And one of the companies that was like that was Ray Batts Furniture in Nashville. You probably never heard of them. But Ray Batts spun off when Ray closed that store, and even before he closed that store, it spun off so many successful people. Ricky Bryan, who started Liberty Furniture, came from Ray Batts Furniture. And, now that company's been passed down to his son, and probably one of the most successful case goods and now leather upholstery companies in the business, even patio. So that was a former Ray Batts employee. David Smithia, I could go on and on. All the people that were spun off from Ray Batts. Another one was Marlowe Furniture in D.C. Marlowe spun off a ton of very, very successful people. And many of those people are still in the industry. And Berkline did the same thing. Berkline did a lot of intensive training. So let's say, for example, the market was going to start on Thursday, which it did back in those days. And they would have us come in on the Sunday before was your arrival date, and you would have training on, well, people would come in on Thursday. I think actually it started on Friday. We would train for 4 days straight, and no rep could carry any other line. They were all exclusive reps. And so, we got very intensive training. And then our managers would come travel with us all the time, and they would be, tasked with training us when they visited. And one of our favorite things to do as reps, there was a guy named Charlie Derian. He would go out on the street either after, the showroom closed or before, and pick up a brochure from a lamp company. Do you have any brochures? And they would give him, a little catalog, and he would get a felt tip marker. And one of his good buddies was a guy named Charlie Derian. I mean, Charlie was the guy who did it, Ron McCullough. And he would write Ron McCullough, salesman number 336, and drop it off at the front desk and say, can you get this to Ron McCullough? And he'd have somebody in the hallway drop it off and say, can you please deliver this to Ron McCullough? Oh my God, the sales managers would get a hand of that, and Ron would be called into the office and he'd swear up and down, I don't have that lamp line. It became a huge issue. Ron was in big trouble. It happened about every 3 markets until they finally caught on. So, but they trained is the short answer, a lot. And they trained you on everything, not just selling their product, like Ashley does. Ashley does spectacular training for their reps, but it's interesting. You don't see a lot of those Ashley reps in management positions, and I'm very surprised you don't, where they have morphed off and went to work as a buyer or as a merchandiser, or even a sales manager. Some of these large retailers.
Maybe it's just that there's so many of them that it gets diluted.
Maybe,
and there's too many of them to make an impact somewhere. But it's just remarkable how many times you run into somebody who at one time worked at Berkline, and it's like the all-stars.
Well, the largest shipping rep in the country ever was, and this is pretty much not disputed, was a guy named Tony Bellarosa, who just retired a couple of years ago. And Charles Shaughnessy, the guy that hacked everybody off the printout, he was the president. Tony got a job working as the sales rep for Klausner, which back in those days was Stewart Furniture. And the rep that they had was in a boat accident, was killed. And Charlie stood up in front of the sales force and announced how proud they were that our biggest shipper, which was Tony, had been hired for the biggest job in the furniture industry. And he had been hired by Stewart for the New York metro area. And Tony did not disappoint Klausner. During his career there, he shipped, in the billions of furniture. When they had his retirement party at Klausner, I believe they said he shipped 1.7 billion in furniture. There was one year in particular where his goal was to ship $1 million a month just in leather. So 12 million, and this is many years ago, when $1 million was still a big number. So $12 million in just leather from Klausner. So.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And what impact does the closing of Badcock Cons, American Freight, all of these guys, buddies?
They're not closing.
Well, now, there's 2 or 3 more that have popped up just recently that are more like Ollie's type stores that are closing too. Essex, they've got 92 stores. They just announced a complete liquidation, but they're primarily furniture retailer. People ask me that all the time, Joe, and I always answer the question the same way. It depends on the market. In some of the small towns where Badcock was, for example, they might have been the only furniture store left in that town. Badcock was able to succeed where other stores would fail because they didn't have the overhead that a independent privately owned store would have. All they had to do was showroom the product and support some of their advertising, and Badcock corporate did the rest, and they just kept a share of the revenue, and the rest went to Badcock. And I don't know what the percentages were, but it was a model that worked for years, and it was a model that you could keep a store in a small town and not be concerned about going out of business, which, their individual dealers um, were performing pretty well. They were making nice incomes, most of them. And what failed was the corporate level operation. And I don't know how it failed. We didn't try to delve into that because it was handled by general commodity liquidators, and we had an opportunity to be uh, very, very lightly involved, and we just passed on that one as far as being involved with it. But
Yeah, but what does it mean to the guys in those towns, right? Like everybody else, like we've had a decade or more of consolidation.
well,
So
in those towns, sometimes that Badcock store was very important to the town, and it's going to really be missed. And in other cases, for example, in the Memphis and west or southeast of Memphis, there's a collection of stores down there that have aligned with Royal Furniture out of Memphis, and they're going to, I believe, operate basically the same way. And then when Art Van went out of business, there were franchise stores that Art Van had. And those franchise stores went a couple, two or three different directions. Some of them aligned with a company that had 20, 30 stores and became a bolt-on to them, and they operate just like they did as franchisees of Art Van. So they just kind of copied the model, and to my knowledge, they're all still in business. So they just got a hold of the expenses and brought the thing back into line, and it worked. I mean, Art Van worked for years. What happened was when they sold it to Thomas H. Lee Partners, they got cute with the real estate and doubled their expense structure and put themselves out of business. The family sold all the real estate or a lot of the real estate, and then presented a much more expensive model back to the buyers, which was not sustainable. And at the end of the day, it went out of business, and we benefited greatly from that. We ran a lot of the stores. I think we ran the best stores. But there are other Wolf, for example, some of the Wolf stores that were part of Art Van. Some of those stores reopened. The Schultz brothers got involved in a deal with Richard. The Schultz guys out of Pennsylvania got involved in a deal with Richard and the other brand that Art Van bought. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but very, very nice gentleman who owned one of the brands that Art Van bought, and the shortfall was close to $10 million in customer deposits. He stepped in and made those all good, if you can imagine that. He fulfilled all of the orders when they reopened, and it was just amazing. And then the Schultz brothers are now managing that for him. So a lot of these stores get picked back up. I don't know what's happening to the con stores. I don't think anybody's going to grab those and reopen those.
They're big.
I think no loss, to be honest with you. They were very much a finance company, more so than a retailer. Their pricing was not anything particularly great, and they had great incentives for financing, and it was all internal. So they were really more in the finance business than they were in the retail business. And Badcock's was at one time, but they had converted mostly to third-party financing. So they're not all gone. Some of them have bounced back. We lost 1,500 stores overnight in the early 2000s, and the industry forged on. But now there's a whole lot of new competition, a lot of chains coming in. That was with Heilig Myers. literally 1,500 stores closed overnight. But now, people that are thinking about going back into the furniture business, frankly, I think you'd be crazy to. The investment that it takes, um, the amount of capital that you need to go in, and then you also have to earn credit lines with so many vendors, and the vendors are scared to death to give credit lines out now or to expand credit lines because they've all taken such huge haircuts because of all the bankruptcies. So there's a lot of fear in the vendors' hearts, and I don't blame them, So, today, to bring that full circle, what I would recommend for somebody to do is to make a hybrid model, not just a mom and pop furniture store, but a model that uses products like what Gabe sells, a lot of art, a lot of tabletop accessories, very heavy special order oriented company, more or less a design oriented company that does have some product of their best sellers that they can deliver, that has every single tool they can to sell, to offer the selection that an internet retailer does, because if you think about it, you go to Amazon or Wayfair. If you're looking for a specific item, you just type in whatever it is you're looking for. You can drill down, choose the colors, choose the size, choose everything. And if you go into a furniture store, you may find 2 or 3 of that item, if you're lucky. So it's, the models have changed so dramatically. So those people that are gone, it's kind of like the dinosaurs died. And probably maybe they should have. Maybe it's a good bloodletting for the industry.
So that's really good advice. Can I ask you to say it louder for the people in the back? About
Yeah, sure. You mean about classy art?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I really believe that. We ran a liquidation for a company that had 3 stores that were, and I don't want to name them because I don't know what
Right.
they want people to know. But these stores were very much like what I just described. Their pitch was, we buy market samples. Our lineup is changing all the time. They had an incredibly successful operation. They were making money hand over fist in all 3 cities that they were doing business in. They had been named the store of the year, furniture store of the year in all 3 cities, big cities, and decided to close because they own a lot of Ashley stores, and they just didn't have the time to deal with this company. It was very difficult to continue to merchandise this heavily accessorized um, company that had to be on the cutting edge of style and design and all that. And so they just didn't have the time, and they didn't want to take the time to try to train a staff. So they just closed them, and gave up the leases. In their world, it was a very small part of their revenue and profit. So it was very hard for us to close those stores. They were hugely successful sales and very popular stores, but that model was working. I mean, it was working great, and this was until 2 years ago. So that is, if somebody asked me what to get into today, that would be it. Heavily accessorized, heavily special order, and
Cheers to that.
earn those accessories, keep them fresh.
Cheers to that.
Yeah. And it seems like the stores or the businesses that are shutting down are the ones, these big ones are the ones that have outside money come in.
Well, that's part
investment
of
dollars. And so is there something about that we just don't understand? Like, it doesn't make sense. You spend all of this money to buy a Badcock or to incorporate a American Freight into your, one of your businesses. And then shortly after that, it shuts down, and you almost can see it coming when one of these big outside money companies comes in.
We saw it happen with Klausner. We saw it happen with manufacturer, vendor after vendor, where the third party, the VC guys come in and take the company over. We saw it happen with, obviously with Badcock and Cons, and we saw it happen with art van, you know.
Oh, it's been happening way before that.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It's
I
almost
don't,
cliche.
I don't understand our business.
It's
As soon
happened
as
for
it-
decades, but
yeah.
to be honest with you, I don't think that that's the single problem that they've experienced in recent years. You know, the claim that the bank wouldn't renew their loans and all this stuff that they come up with. I think in the case of all these retailers, Badcock, Cons especially, and of course Essex, their customer is a lower end customer. Okay, it's a promotional product company, and they're especially the ones that were based on, you know, a high credit usage. Their customer is the ones that have been hit hardest by the economic downturn, inflation, you know, interest rates going up. That consumer is the hardest hit. You know, furniture is the last thing on their mind. They're having trouble paying for their rent and and paying for their car maintenance and their phone and their kids and all the other expenses they have. You know, when they can't rub two nickels together. You know, and so furniture became a deferrable purchase when times got tough. I mean, if you think, you know, some people, you hear all the different numbers about inflation, but if it went up 10%, inflation went up 10%, their cost of living, you know, some people's rent went up 30%. Rents went up. You know, these people just can't make it. They can't pay these bills, and that consumer was left with you know, no choice but to, you know, just keep working as hard as they possibly could and defer their furniture purchase until later. And so that obviously had an incredible impact on these retailers. So I say that, but then on the flip side, you take Royal in Memphis, for example, very promotional, very credit oriented. What are they doing to continue to be successful?
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know what the answer to that is, but, you know, I think maybe Babcock and Cons were too top heavy. You know, I don't know.
Well, I think Badcock was fine until it got gutted and then resold. And then Cons had no business buying anybody. They were struggling. They bought them for all the wrong reasons. But that would be interesting to have Butch or Mike Spiros from Royal on the podcast next. Like, how are y'all doing it?
Well, and even like, you know, Klausner, they didn't supply the low end, but they, you know, a big VC or, you know, money came in and took over, and then it's not long after that everything gets shut down. And so what is that? Like, what are they doing? It's so
I don't
obvious
know.
to us, you know, and I feel like there's some shell game that's happening that we just don't understand.
I think I understand it, but probably not as good as Tom. But my understanding of it is all of those types of situations, those guys are running a business from financials. While running a business from financials is important, it's not everything, especially in this business. This is a very people-oriented business. And so when you remove that element and just start slashing away and making these grand strokes of the pen because the numbers don't make you happy, like, you're messing things up. Like, the other thing that's common is when these vendors take all their sales force inside, right? And I've seen this so many times. They fire their entire sales force and bring it inside. Oh, we hired the best and blah blah blah. And it's like every single time I've heard that,
Never worked.
it
Yeah.
never works.
Mhm.
It never works. And those two things are in the same kind of wheelhouse. It's like
I think Broyhill was the first to do that, Gabe. And Broyhill, I think Broyhill was the first to do that. You know, they gave the guys Chrysler K cars and an expense account and a salary and put them out on the road, and immediately their business, you know, disintegrated.
Right.
And so they did away with that and hired reps back. Thomasville, I think, went through it for a very short period of time.
There's a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Hillsdale did it. Who else? Yeah, I mean, like, there's so many. And the human component in this industry is so important.
I
Right?
agree.
Like, you know, like, I mean, PFP, just PFP, like, they're so successful And it's because they're at everything. They have the relationships. They're a people company. They're people first, right?
Right.
And
That's really all we offer is people, you know.
yeah.
So that's the key. I think you're right on that. So, you know, going back to these companies that have gone out with the VC companies that have the ownership, when Klausner was purchased, I think shortly after they were purchased, you know, the CEO retired and, you know, took his bag of money and went to the beach. And they hired a president, who could blame him, by the way. And they hired a president. They didn't hire a president from within the industry. They hired the former president of Mastercraft Boat Company. So, you know, I don't know for sure, but I don't think I don't think Klausner was laying up any fiberglass in their factories. Um, aligning any props and determining how big the weight can be behind sofas. You know, he had no expertise in the furniture industry, not in the marketing, not in the manufacturing, not in the relationships. He knew no one, you know, so that was a huge failure. On the flip side, Badcock was in deep trouble years ago, and they hired a guy named Don Marks. Don had never been in the industry, and he turned that company around. But he jumped in with both feet, learned everything, went out and met the owners of all the independent stores, and he made himself very valuable. He passed away, and he was a huge loss to the industry. So occasionally it works. Most of the time it doesn't. When they bring somebody in from
I don't
outside.
think that bringing somebody from the outside is the problem, because it can be done if the attention to detail is there and you're fostering that kind of position, like you're, fostering it into the industry. Like, I think that can be done. But when it comes to like the private equity and VCs and things like that, where you're not bringing in personnel, you're bringing in these people who just make decisions that aren't interested in learning the industry. They're
Well,
just
and what you might not know, a lot of times, like Sun Capital, for example, they got into our business for a while, and they bought Rowe and several other companies. Pretty much everything they bought went down the drain. But their model was built where if they would go in and buy companies that were struggling, if they could have 10% success, the way that they would be successful. And each of their investment groups was a whole different group of investors. So Sun Capital never actually even bought companies. It would be an associated company that would buy a Row furniture or that sort of thing. So what these companies found out is immediately after they were purchased is they got hit with gigantic management fees from Sun Capital, because Sun Capital paid dividends to their investors to keep them on the hook, I guess. So one company that I know the details on had to pay an administrative fee every 6 months of $500,000. So here's a company that's already struggling for cash flow.
the fuck.
Yeah, $500,000 every 6 months. And I don't know that happened with Klausner or some of these other companies we've discussed, but you got to think it just tears their cash flow apart when that happens, So they basically tank their own investment, which is ridiculous. But I've seen it happen.
It's ridiculous, but it's believable. It makes sense. And so much of this just doesn't make sense. It's got like, what are they doing this for? Is it, this concept of there's enough assets that if they can just make a little bit of money for a little bit of time, then they can sell all the assets. And that is worth more than what they paid for the company.
Well, the guy that bought
something
Love's,
like that.
you remember Love's Furniture? It's
Yeah.
Okay. So Love's was a guy who had never been in the furniture business. He came in with investment money, and then later that was determined that he didn't actually put a nickel into the company. And that what he did is he bought these leases, turned around and resold the leases, and used the cash flow from the leases to fund the capital expense of starting off the company. And you can see how that turned out for him. He ended up bankrupt in less than 12 months. and and he's actually under investigation now. But there's a lot of people that do things like that. We don't know all the intricacies because they don't put it, in the news.
Yeah. Well, and I've got a good buddy who's a rep. And when our stores were still open, he came to me one time, and he's a primarily dinettes rep, also a little bit of case goods, doesn't have any upholstery. And he was asking for advice about upholstery. And he said a good friend of his owned a shopping center with a Publix grocery store in the
Right.
shopping center. And Publix lease said that the shopping center had to be 90% occupied or Publix could break their lease.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So the owner of the shopping center came to my rep friend and said, I'm going to open a furniture. I'm in jeopardy of being below the 90%. So I'm going to open a furniture store. I don't even care if it makes money. I just need to get my occupancy to this point where it prevents Publix from being able to leave. And so it's that kind of behind the scenes stuff. So he was like, he went to this rep and he's like, I want to fill it with sofas because they take up a lot of space and it's not a whole lot of money. And he didn't care if it made money, but so, I mean, I'm sure he put a person in it and, he wanted it to make money, but if it didn't, the real motivation.
I've never heard that one before. That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. We had a client that they were in very serious trouble. But most of our clients, just to be clear, are not in trouble. Probably 70% have no financial challenges. Everybody thinks they do, but I want to be clear about that. They just want to retire, close a non-productive store, that sort of thing.
Kids are not interested in taking over.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this particular client was in very serious financial trouble. They were subleasing their store and it was a 120,000 square foot building. They'd been successful for years. Their business kind of took a tumble when a bunch of Ashley stores came to town and opened up, and Ashley was a big source of theirs. So it, sort of made life very difficult for them. And they had a lease on their building they could not get out of. The company that had the lease, as well as the original landlord, were holding their feet to the fire. And we had our attorney review their lease, and written into their lease was a caveat that the parking lot had to have X number of parking places. Well, the city had condemned one corner of the parking lot to put a turn lane in, and they had taken up 2 of their parking places. So because they didn't have the proper number of parking places, they were able to exit their lease. And our attorney found that loophole for them and saved them from bankruptcy. So you just never know. There's always things that come up. As a matter of fact, they're still in business very, very successfully. We kept them out of bankruptcy. We're really proud of this one. Kept them out of bankruptcy. Made a nice profit for them. They were able to go and open 3 35,000 square foot stores, which reduced their ridiculous, massive overhead expense, doing almost as much business out of each of those as they were doing out of the 120,000 square foot store. So
that's a great point. And I don't know if it gets out there enough that what PFP does is more than just liquidation, going out of business sales. Like that.
Oh, we do. Yeah.
That kind of thing. And, getting experts involved and looking at the business operations and saying, well, here are some things that you're missing.
Well, like I was saying earlier, Joe, about the model that I would recommend, one of the things that we try to do for people is, mom and pop traditional furniture stores are dying on the vine. I mean, it's not because they're not doing anything wrong. They've got beautiful stores. Their pricing can be very competitive because many times they own their building. They're advertising aggressively. Sometimes they're in social media, and they can't figure out why they're not attracting a younger customer. And basically what's happening is their customer is aging out. I had a client in North Carolina. I asked him how old his average customer was. He said between a walker and a wheelchair.
Damn.
So that's what happened. Is your customer
Such a great answer.
Yeah, it was. But it was true. He wasn't kidding. And so what we do is we'll help people, stick a knife in the back of that model. And it's very hard for people to buy into that because, we've been here for 90 years, or maybe even in one case, a store's been there for 160 years. It's been passed down from family to family to family. Well, you need to close it up. And we, depending on the state, we can either have a going out of business sale and then reopen under a new brand with a new model, or a store closing sale if they want to keep the same corporate structure. And, towards the end of the sale, they always want to say they're closing so that they can reopen. And they very rarely get it. No, you need to kill Joe Walters Furniture. That's why they're not coming here anymore. These kids, that was their grandma or their mother's furniture store. They don't want to come to your store. They won't come to your store. And if you just tell them it's Joe Walters Furniture Light, they're still not coming. Kill it. Come up with a new name, new model, new facade, new marketing, refresh. Did Gabe fall asleep?
No, I'm still here.
Okay.
But I am Chinese-eyed at this point, and I'm just laughing because Joe's squirming inside because he hates when people put an S on Walter. And even though your version was possessive, he's still squirming. I love that. I love that for both of you.
I didn't even know.
You lie.
I didn't even notice.
Lie. But I do think now is a great time to welcome everybody to the podcast. Thank you for joining us. This is Two Homeboys. I'm your host, Gabriel with Classy Art, my co-host, Joe Walter with Tango Multimedia, and our very special guest, Tom Liddell, industry extraordinaire. He knows more about the industry than anybody I've ever encountered. Tom Liddell with Planned Furniture Promotions. So thank you guys.
That's nice. Thank you. Yeah. Well, that's very
now
nice.
We can start the show, Tom. So
all right.
Anyways.
I'm ready. I've got my I didn't get to brag about this. I have my Two Homeboys glass here. That's
nice.
That's
I'm excited too. I finally got mine. So I want to thank Joe and his son for setting me up, because I've only been doing this 1.5 years, but I finally got one.
I try not to miss any of your podcasts. I generally try to watch the clips rather than the entire podcast. I think I see almost every show, a little bit at a time.
And the unfortunate thing is the show is more informative and better than the clips. So with the clips, we have to limit the clips to 1 minute, because we just don't have enough bandwidth. It's just us and Alex working on this. And if the clips are 1 minute, I can schedule them to post to all of the social media.
Right.
So oftentimes the point of a conversation gets cut off. You've seen how this rambles. And so you may not be able to get the most interesting parts in only 1 minute. So today we sacrifice, in trying to carve out what could be an interesting 1 minute clip, instead of, manually watching the show and saying, okay, this conversation kind of was 3 minutes long.
Unless we were able to hire a Brittany or somebody who could do it piece by piece, where you have 3 minute, 5 minute clips without the scheduler, but we need a sponsor for that. So
yeah.
Are you posting in YouTube too, or just in
YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Podcasts, all the platforms.
So the full length goes to Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, and then
you have a tool that uploads to all of those simultaneously.
Yeah. So I schedule it, but
if we had somebody who could do them individually, not necessarily on the full link, but on the like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube Shorts, TikTok. If we had somebody that can schedule them individually, we can get the meat and potatoes of the conversation, because we could do a 3-minute or a 5-minute, depending on the platform.
Yeah, I think you can keep people for 3 minutes pretty easy. If it's something they're interested.
I agree, but we don't have the personnel for it, or we want to do this for fun. So
no, I get it.
We don't want to,
And you'll notice it now because you've been part of this conversation and you see how it's kind of evolved through the course of the thing. And then when you see the clips, if you don't rewatch the full 2 hours, it becomes apparent that
this is the part where we ask,
missed
the part where we ask Plan Furniture Promotions to be our sponsor.
Oh yeah, sure. Let me hang on. Let me send you a logo. Yeah.
But no,
I think you've done a really nice job. I remember in particular, and I apologize, I can't remember his name. The gentleman from Coaster.
Larry Floriani.
His was excellent. His interview was excellent. He's very
good.
What's that?
It was so good, and he was so insecure about it. He kept saying, "I thought this was supposed to be funny. I thought it was supposed to," and he was hilarious.
Yeah, he was, and he's a very smart guy too. He is. He understands the industry, and he's been around for a long time. He comes off, a little nerdy when you first meet him, but he's not that way at all. I mean,
right.
Once you get to know him,
he's a great dude.
Nerdy's not the right word. A little uber conservative. Let's put it that way. Not his true sense of humor and all that's very refreshing, mixed with a lot of great facts. So nice guy.
Yeah, great dude.
Yeah, and just knows a lot about everything and is not bashful at all about going up to everybody. He'll walk up into Ashley and people that you think should be his arch nemesis, and he's got no problem just mingling with them at events, and seems like sharing ideas with them.
He's everywhere.
He is everywhere.
Yeah, he's kind of like Roy. Roy's always going to be there. He's always going to be there. So many, people that are loyal to the industry. So
yeah,
for sure.
But, well, congratulations again, Joe, on your new marriage and Father Cohen. You did a great job, I understand. So marrying the happy couple. Were you nervous?
No.
Yeah.
Not
so
at
how
all.
long
we were having a good time.
How long was your service?
So yeah, they asked for short and sweet, so I limited it to 45 minutes.
Wow.
No, it was probably 10 minutes tops. Not even that.
Maybe not even. Yeah.
Yeah, not even.
Yeah.
It was. It was really. Beautiful. He did a fantastic job. It's really. It was really a good. Funny and head on. Unique things about each of our personalities, and endearing, but not verbose. And like the worst part of weddings is sitting through the damn ceremony. So we wanted it to be short and fun.
In Gabe's presentation, Joe, could you sense any? You're there marrying her. Could you sense any jealousy when he was talking?
Oh, absolutely. under his breath, he said, "You shouldn't be fucking doing this. I should be standing there across from you." He said, "That should be me."
I can just picture Gabe with the bouquet, a little thing on his wrist.
I look very pretty in drag. I'm just throw that out there. So you missed all of this.
Yeah.
No, it was a good time. It was a very non-traditional wedding, and I think everybody there was so refreshed. Like, they opened the bar pre-ceremony and the food pre-ceremony, and then the last hour of the reception brought in Taco Bell. I'm a fan.
Taco Bell, wow.
Yeah. The two biggest hits of the night were the Taco Bell at the end of the night, and then we had a butt sketch artist.
Oh yeah, So a caricature
interesting.
artist that only did butts.
But
Yeah. It was pretty great. And my date had an exceptional butt.
is it possible for you to right now during this edit in one of those caricatures? So as we talk,
Hold, please. Y'all keep the conversation going. I'm going to go get my ex-girlfriend's butt.
ask and you shall receive. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was a thing that started off slow and then had a line the entire night. Once
So did people
realized,
actually model their naked?
well, you just stand there. You just
Oh,
just as if you were getting a caricature done, but you face away from the artist, and
Oh my
he
gosh.
sketches you from head to knees, basically. And it was a
That's
huge hit.
bizarre.
And
I've never heard of that. Yeah. So trivia question about going back to bourbon and whiskey and all that.
yeah,
Do you know the difference between bourbon and whiskey?
bourbon has to be aged in new charred oak barrels.
Oh my gosh, there it is.
There it is.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if she was trying to stick that finger in my butt or she was flicking off the artist. I'm good either way.
That's hilarious.
There's one example.
I think that he drew the finger on all of them. After getting to see a bunch of the results.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. So I do believe that it's bourbon has to be aged in a new charred oak barrel. Never been used before.
It also has to be at least 51% corn.
Yeah, I was going to say it has to be the correct proportions.
And it can only be made in the United States, bourbon.
Right. And a lot of people think it has to be made in Kentucky, which is not.
No, that's not true. No,
that's not true.
Yeah. And a lot of people think that Jack Daniels has some hold on the term whiskey, but obviously they don't.
Not at all.
So have you all been to Lynchburg?
I was there a long time ago, and a really interesting experience, and also a dry county.
Yeah, well,
at least it was then.
Yeah, that's not really true. I mean, they tell about the tasting guys that they taste it, but they're not allowed to swallow it, and they have to spit it out and all that. But yeah, that's interesting. But they've got quite a. I don't know if you saw it. One of their gigantic warehouses collapsed. The racks in the warehouses collapsed the other day, and the barrels broke through the sidewalls of the barrel house.
Oh, shit.
They're called barrel houses. Google it and you'll see it. It was unbelievable. I think each barrel house holds 1 million gallons of Jack Daniels. And it's amazing how much they sell worldwide. It's huge. Jack Daniels is the top selling item in military PXs, more than toilet paper. So go figure.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Maybe
they do that based on revenue, not units. I'm sure they do.
That almost would have to be the case. But I've seen several articles lately about how the bourbon industry is going to be struggling now because they've built up so much inventory for the demand that was there that is now waning.
Well, part of what's happening, I'm very close to the Jack Daniels factory, and so we get a lot of news coverage on it. And one of the things, it's not awful. Look at that.
Wow, gosh.
One of the things that they're attributing that to, Joe, is the recent medical, and they've said this before, but now it's a revelation to everybody that it has toxins and can cause cancer. Alcohol. So it's a big deal,
Yeah.
I literally do not have a single person. All my kids are very health oriented. They're organic food and all that, and they would drink. But now after all these recent reports, nothing. Not any of my kids or their wives or husbands drink. Adult children. Now some of my grandkids, the ones under 10, some of those drink, but their parents do not drink. No alcohol.
Well, they have to. That's
Yeah,
the only way. That's the only way 10-year-olds are tolerable is if
Yeah.
they're drunk. I saw an article not long ago about 10 industries that were struggling because the younger generation is just not interested.
Yeah.
And alcohol was one of them. Like that, the younger generation, the ones that are just now becoming drinking age, are more interested in weed than they are alcohol.
Gummies and weed.
Yeah. And then expensive jewelry was another thing that is, going to struggle because they just don't.
Expensive furniture.
They don't care about jewelry. They don't care about brand names as much. When we were kids, you had to have.
We had a recent death in the family, and there was some beautiful jewelry that was left to some of the kids, the millennials. No interest.
Yeah.
No interest whatsoever. So surprising. Only a couple of pieces each for memories' sake, for sentimental reasons, but they didn't want to take like handfuls of it. So
yeah.
Well, on the note of death, I think we should wrap this up, fellas.
Yeah, I'm for that. That's
Before
great.
we get into something real morbid.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for inviting me to be on your show. I think it continues to improve. I think y'all are doing a great job. I've enjoyed watching your episodes, and as a matter of fact, I know most of our people that work for us who know you all. I think they actually all watch your episodes. I don't know what kind of platform they're watching them on where you would see that count, but probably all over the place. TikTok and YouTube, everywhere.
No, we could see every one of them because we have 12 subscribers. And so now we know who those 12 are.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like our subscribership is shit, but we do get the views. So like the viewership is there. It's just, we forget to say, hit the bell and subscribe. And
Well, you might put a link. One thing I've noticed is on your posts, do you put a link to your to the mothership where the entire show is hosted on every single post?
No, only in the on Instagram you can't put a link within the comments, and so
you can put it in the bio though.
It's in the bio of each of the accounts, and
but on the other platforms we should put the link tree.
But we created an end screen for all of the clips that says watch the full episode on YouTube, but I don't know if people pay attention to that or not.
Right.
Yeah, that's a splash at the end. Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah. We need your input.
Yeah, you don't need my input. You guys got to figure it out.
You got like 10,000 subscribers. We got 12. The percentages are just
well,
the numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me on your show, and hopefully we'll see your numbers continue to jump up.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, man.
Yeah, it sure has. Thank you so much for
certainly one of the most knowledgeable people in the industry, and bring a wealth of to every conversation, and so
that's nice of you to say. I appreciate that.
Great having you, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, gentlemen, have a good night.
Well, that was nice because we were able to pick the best sellers and things like that. What you found was,
bitch, I can see you falling asleep while I'm telling my story.
I'm not falling asleep. Look, just try it.